The modern American office is fueled by bad coffee and pure, unfiltered spite. We are breaking down 49 of the most ridiculous passive-aggressive feuds ever fought in the workplace. From malicious compliance that stunned management to psychological games played with the office thermostat. These stories prove that the only thing harder than the actual work is dealing with the people sitting next to you. This is how bored employees exact their revenge. 1. If you've ever sat through a corporate meeting, you know that words like synergy and paradigm shift are just fancy ways of saying absolutely nothing. A new hire named Ben reached his limit with his boss, Doug, who spoke exclusively in this garbage language. Ben decided to run a social experiment and started inventing nonsense phrases like proactive granular down-drilling during strategy sessions. Instead of questioning it, Doug, terrified of appearing out of touch, immediately adopted the term. Within a week, Doug was sending company-wide memos demanding everyone granularly down-drill their quarterly assets. It just proves that if you say something with enough confidence in a boardroom, management will put it on a plaque. 2. There is a special circle of hell reserved for managers who ignore calendar invites, leaving their team in scheduling limbo. One team decided to fight fire with an absolute avalanche of digital spam. Since their manager refused to decline or accept meetings, they filled his Outlook with invites for aggressively mundane tasks. We are talking about critical alerts like urgent sync on pen usage and mandatory 30-second huddle to confirm we exist. His calendar turned into a solid, unreadable wall of notifications that buzzed his phone every 4 minutes. He eventually learned that clicking decline is significantly easier than having a stroke from notification fatigue. 3. Suggestion boxes are usually where hope goes to die. But one office prankster turned the concept into a spectator sport. They installed a very official-looking, yet completely fake, anonymous HR complaint box right in the break room. It looked legitimate enough that people poured their petty, unhinged hearts out into it. After a month, instead of taking the complaints to HR, the prankster compiled the wildest ones, including a serious grievance about a coworker's aggressive blinking, and emailed them to the entire company. It was a masterclass in exposing the absolute absurdity of workplace grudges, and honestly, HR probably wished they had thought of it first. 4. Every office has a Megan. She is the person who treats the communal kitchen sink like her personal science experiment, letting dirty dishes fester until they develop their own ecosystem. Her co-workers finally snapped. Someone didn't just wash her moldy coffee mug, they weaponized it. They took that crusty ceramic biohazard and encased it entirely in a lime green jello mold, suspending it like a prehistoric fossil. They left the wobbling, translucent monument on her desk with a note that simply said, "I think this is yours." It was a level of passive aggression that requires actual culinary skills to pull off, and frankly, it belongs in a museum. 5. Scent sensitivities are real, but what happened in this office was chemical warfare. An employee insisted on using a pungent, patchouli-scented diffuser that made the workspace smell like a damp basement at a Grateful Dead concert. A fed-up colleague retaliated not with words but with vanilla. He hid 3 different vanilla-scented Glade plugins around the patchouli lover's desk, all cranked to the maximum setting. The resulting aromatic collision created a sickly sweet vanilla patchouli cloud that was arguably a violation of the Geneva Convention. The smell was so thick you could practically chew it, forcing a truce through sheer olfactory suffocation. 6. Do not mess with IT. They hold the keys to your digital existence and they know how to waste your budget. A manager who had a habit of submitting lazy, useless tickets like "monitor is weird" found himself on the receiving end of malicious compliance. The technician didn't just fix the issue. He spent 4 billable hours writing a dissertation-level report, analyzing how a single pixel was 3 shades off its intended color value. He detailed the physics of light and liquid crystal displays, and then, with a smile, billed the entire 4 hours to the manager's department. It was the most expensive lesson in how to write a clear sentence that the company ever paid for. 7. Personal space is a myth in the cubicle farm, But Kyle was a close talker, the kind of guy who breathes your own air before you get a chance to use it. His neighbor, Maya, came up with a biological defense system that didn't require a single conversation. She started bringing an entire raw onion for lunch every day, crunching into it like it was a crisp apple. She didn't say a word. She just let the powerful, tear-inducing fumes create a natural, 3-foot-wide force field around her desk. Kyle couldn't get within speaking distance without weeping, which is a brilliant way to enforce social distancing without breaking HR rules. 8. This might be the greatest psychological operation in corporate history. An employee started a whisper campaign claiming that the office Keurig machine had achieved sentience and only brewed good coffee for people it liked. It sounds completely insane, but office paranoia is a powerful drug. Within a week, grown adults were seen gently stroking the plastic lid of the machine, whispering compliments, and pleading with the appliance for a decent roast. Productivity absolutely tanked as the staff spent their mornings trying to court the favor of a cheap piece of breakroom equipment, proving that people will believe anything if it explains why the coffee tastes like mud. 9. A non-technical manager named Barb had a habit of hovering over her programmers, offering helpful suggestions that were about as useful as a chocolate teapot. One developer, Alex, finally cracked the code on how to handle her without getting fired. He coded a bright, shiny, pulsating idea button onto her dashboard that looked incredibly important but was functionally connected to absolutely nothing. He told her it sent her brilliant insights directly to the engineering team's priority queue. In reality, it was a digital placebo. Barb proudly clicked that button dozens of times a day, feeling like a captain steering the ship, while the dev team enjoyed the beautiful silence of a notification-free afternoon. It was the perfect pacifier for a micromanager. 10. There is nothing worse than mandatory fun in a soul-sucking corporate environment. After being reprimanded for not showing enough spirit, a deeply cynical IT administrator decided to malicious compliance the entire office network. He used his admin privileges to change the default Windows startup and shut down sounds for every computer in the building. Now, every single morning began with a chorus of sarcastic, deadpan voices saying, "Yay!" and every evening ended with a perfectly timed sad trombone sound effect. It turned the daily grind into a bad sitcom, and management couldn't even figure out how to revert it without asking the very guy who did it for help. 11. We have all witnessed mansplaining in the wild, but one woman decided she was done being the polite victim of unsolicited lectures. She was tired of her male coworker explaining her own job duties to her as if she were a toddler who just learned to walk. Her solution was acoustic warfare. She bought a handheld marine air horn and kept it hidden under her desk. The next time he started a sentence with, "Well, actually," she cut him off with a short, deafening blast that silenced the entire floor. As the ringing in everyone's ears subsided, she calmly smiled and said, "Sorry, I thought I heard a condescending idiot." It was Pavlovian conditioning at its finest. 12. While a notoriously arrogant manager was away on a 2-week vacation, his helpful subordinate decided to update his out-of-office email reply. The subordinate discreetly changed the text to something a lot more honest than the standard corporate greeting. It read, "I am currently away from my desk. For urgent matters, please reconsider if they are actually urgent. They probably are not, and you are likely just panicking over nothing." The beauty of this prank wasn't just the snark, it was the accuracy. The auto-reply ran for 4 full days before anyone from corporate noticed, mostly because everyone who received it just nodded in agreement and went about their day. 13. Mr. Henderson was the type of boss who would reply to a 3-page, detailed project proposal with a single letter, K. It is the ultimate dismissive power move, the texting equivalent of a middle finger. His subordinate, Tim, decided to mirror that energy. He stopped writing professional emails and started replying to every single request from his boss, no matter how complex or urgent, with a single word, acknowledged. That is it. No, will do. No, on it. Just the cold, robotic confirmation of a Terminator. It drove Henderson absolutely crazy because Technically, Tim was being professional, but emotionally, he was giving the digital equivalent of a blank stare. 14. Being told you aren't a team player is usually code for you aren't suffering enough with the rest of us. After receiving this critique for not sharing enough progress updates, a developer decided to share everything. He started replying to his manager's simple requests by hitting reply all to the entire 50-person department listserv. He would send updates like, per your request, I have now changed the button color from blue to a slightly darker navy blue. Is this synergistic enough for everyone? The inbox clutter was catastrophic. He held the entire department hostage with his updates until the manager begged him to go back to working in silence. 15. There is a poetic justice in using food as a weapon. A manager who was famous for shooting down every creative idea his team proposed was eventually defeated by the lunch menu. An employee in charge of ordering catering for the weekly innovation meeting decided that the food should match the manager's personality. He started exclusively ordering the most boring, uninspired food humanly possible. Plain turkey sandwiches on dry white bread with absolutely no condiments, lettuce, or cheese. It was a culinary desert. It is hard to brainstorm outside the box when you are choking down a sandwich that tastes like cardboard in despair. 16. Gary in logistics was a loud talker, the kind of guy whose phone voice could penetrate bank vaults. Instead of confronting him directly, his cubicle neighbors coordinated a symphony of annoyance. They formed a pact. The second Gary started booming, everyone in a 20-foot radius would immediately start coughing, dropping heavy staplers, or typing furiously on mechanical keyboards. It wasn't just noise, it was a wall of sound designed to break his concentration. Gary would start a sentence, get drowned out by a cacophony of office noises, and eventually just hang up in frustration. It was bullying, sure, but it was for the greater good of the ecosystem. 17. Every office has that one guy who pretends to have read every business strategy book ever written. To expose him, a team fabricated a quote from a completely non-existent author and slapped it on a motivational poster in the break room. The quote was total gibberish about vertical horizons and static momentum. Sure enough, the target walked in, read it, and claimed to be a huge fan of the author's work. He even spent 10 minutes explaining the deeper strategic meaning of the nonsense quote to a room full of people who were trying not to explode with laughter. It was a perfect trap for an intellectual imposter. 18. If you have a boss who micromanages, the only way out is to overwhelm them with the control they crave. An employee decided to get revenge by CCing his boss on utterly mundane, microscopic updates. He sent emails like, just confirming I have received your previous confirmation, and updating you that I will be utilizing the restroom for approximately 3 minutes. He sent dozens of these a day. The boss's inbox was flooded with thousands of useless notifications, burying the actual important emails. It forced the micromanager to finally admit that maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to know everything that was happening every single second. 19. Mandatory office potlucks are a special kind of torture for introverted engineers. One employee, furious about being forced to participate in forced bonding, brought in a dish that technically followed the rules but violated the spirit of the event. He brought a deconstructed casserole. It was a tray with every single ingredient laid out raw, and in its original packaging. A box of uncooked pasta, a cold can of cream of mushroom soup, a block of cheddar cheese, and a bag of onions. He told everyone some assembly was required. It was a brilliant protest against unpaid emotional labor, and needless to say, he was never asked to bring food again. 20. The office fridge is a lawless wasteland where possession is 9/10 of the law. One employee got tired of their lunch vanishing into the gullet of a mysterious thief, so they resorted to psychological warfare. Instead of leaving an angry note, they started labeling their Tupperware with biologically hazardous names. Human organs, transplant grade, stool sample, highly contagious, and my personal favorite, experimental antidote. It turns out, even the most shameless sandwich thief has standards. Nobody was brave enough to crack open a container marked bio-waste, so the food remained untouched, proving that fear is the best preservative for a ham sandwich. 21. During a brutal summer heatwave, the IT department, the lords of the server room thermostat, requested a budget increase for better cooling. The CFO laughed and denied it. Big mistake. Suddenly, the office-wide air conditioning system began to suffer from a very specific malfunction. It would run perfectly fine everywhere, except when the CFO walked past the main vents. At that exact moment, the AC would mysteriously blast hot air or shut off entirely. It was a targeted thermal strike. The CFO was sweating through his expensive suits while the IT guys sat in their Arctic server room, comfortable and smug in their frozen kingdom. 22. Utensil theft is a petty crime, but Frank wasn't having it. Someone kept stealing his favorite fork, forcing him to eat salad with a spoon like a toddler. Frank's solution was nuclear. He brought in an absurdly large novelty-sized fork, the kind you hang on a wall as bad decor, and physically chained it to the break room microwave with a heavy-duty bike lock. The attached note simply read, "Is this one big enough for you?" It was a masterclass in passive aggression. The utensil theft stopped immediately because it is incredibly hard to steal a fork that weighs 5 pounds and is shackled to a kitchen appliance. 23. The office music war is usually fought with volume, but this employee fought with science. He was tired of his neighbor's tinny headphones leaking heavy metal at all hours. Instead of asking him to turn it down, he downloaded a high-frequency tone generator. He played a sound just on the edge of human hearing, the mosquito tone, from a speaker aimed directly at his neighbor. It was silent to everyone else, but to the metalhead, it was a piercing, subconscious drill into the brain. The guy spent weeks rubbing his ears and looking around in confusion, slowly going mad from a noise he couldn't even prove existed. 24. Brown nosers are annoying, but they are also incredibly gullible. An employee got revenge on a coworker who lived to kiss up to management. He managed to grab the guy's phone and subtly change the contact number for CEO to his own personal cell number. For the next month, he became the recipient of the most cringe-inducing, sycophantic texts imaginable. Late-night messages like, "Just had a brilliant idea for the merger," and "You inspire me, sir," flooded his phone. He never replied, he just read them, laughed, and saved them as blackmail material for the upcoming Christmas party. 25. Dave from IT was a condescending jerk who treated every support ticket like a personal insult. The entire department decided to humble him. Someone with access hacked the main office printer and changed its default language to Finnish, a language that looks like someone fell asleep on a keyboard. For a full 24 hours, every urgent report, legal memo, and spreadsheet printed out with headers like "Tulostusviri" and "Paperitukos." The office ground to a halt, and Dave spent the entire day sweating, trying to navigate a menu system he couldn't read, fixing a problem nobody would admit to causing. 26. Quitting a job is an art form, and one disgruntled receptionist painted a masterpiece. On his last day, he accessed the company's phone system and replaced the soothing, generic elevator hold music. In its place, he uploaded a 10-hour loop of a screaming goat. It was pure audio chaos. Every important client who called in was treated to relentless, barnyard shrieking while they waited for sales. It took IT 2 full days to figure out how to reset the system, meaning the company's professional reputation was briefly held hostage by a farm animal. 27. Some people decorate their desks, others build shrines to madness. One woman had a desk covered in 50 nodding bobbleheads, creating a constant, nauseating wave of motion. Her neighbor didn't complain. Instead, he installed a tiny, silent, vibrating motor under his own desk that he could activate with his knee. Whenever she tried to focus, he would trigger the motor, sending invisible vibrations through the floor dividers. Suddenly, all 50 bobbleheads would start wobbling furiously in unison like they were possessed by a demon. She spent weeks thinking her desk was haunted or that she was living on a fault line. 28. When management enforces a clean desk policy, they usually mean hide your papers. But one programmer took it as a literal challenge. Every evening at 5 p.m., he would dismantle his entire workstation. He unplugged the monitors, the keyboard, the mouse, and even took down his family photos. He carefully stacked every single item into a precarious, leaning tower of hardware right on top of his office chair. His desk was technically empty, complying perfectly with the rule. Every morning, he spent 20 minutes setting it all back up on company time, proving that malicious compliance is the most expensive form of protest. 29. Every office has a villain, and this one was an arrogant salesman with a bizarre kryptonite. He had an irrational, violent hatred for the word moist. The team discovered this weakness and weaponized it immediately. For 6 months, they worked the word into every single conversation. The quarterly projections are looking moist, someone would say during a serious meeting. The market is saturated, really moist right now. They watched with glee as he visibly shuddered and twitched, unable to complain to HR because, technically, moist is not a curse word. It was linguistic torture at its finest. 30. We all know the poster. The kitten hanging from a branch with the caption, "Hang in there." A manager loved this cliché piece of motivation, but a graphic designer on his team hated it. The designer secretly created a tiny photorealistic sticker of the rope fraying and snapping. He placed it over the original rope on the poster. It was a subtle, slow-burn prank. It took 2 weeks for the manager to glance up and notice that his motivational kitten was technically falling to its doom. The symbolism hit him hard, and he reportedly had a small existential crisis right there in his cubicle. 31. A manager's ego is often tied to weird objects, and this guy loved his ridiculously oversized, ornate fountain pen. He treated it like Excalibur. An intern, on his very last day, decided to leave a legacy. He carefully disassembled the prized pen and replaced the premium ink cartridge with a novelty one filled with disappearing ink. The manager spent the next morning signing important contracts and memos, only to have his signature vanish into thin air 20 minutes later. He thought he was losing his mind, or that the company had bought cursed paper. It was the perfect invisible crime. 32. There is nothing more infuriating than a chronic interrupter. One woman found the perfect countermove. Every time her male coworker cut her off mid-sentence, she didn't get angry. She just seamlessly switched to speaking absolute gibberish without breaking eye contact. She would go from "the Q3 data suggests" straight into "flibber flabber zog noggin," looking him dead in the eye. It was just weird enough to make him pause, completely confused, and lose his train of thought. He would stop talking to figure out if he was having a stroke, giving her the floor back. 33. It guys are the silent judges of your browser history. One technician noticed a high-level executive was slowing down the entire network by streaming Netflix in 4K during work hours. Blocking the site would have caused a tantrum, so the IT guy chose a crueler path. He throttled that specific executive's IP address down to 1998 dial-up speeds. The executive didn't get an error message. He just got the endless, spinning circle of buffering death. Watching a powerful man yell at a loading screen is a beautiful form of digital justice that doesn't leave a paper trail. 34. If you keep your employees late every Friday, you deserve whatever happens to you. One employee was tired of his boss ruining the start of his weekend with last-minute requests. He found a local amateur bagpipe group that practiced in a nearby park, and they weren't very good. He paid them $50 to set up right outside the boss's ground floor window every Friday at exactly 5:05 p.m. The sound was deafening, a dying cat screech that penetrated the glass. The boss couldn't think, let alone work, and started leaving promptly at 5 just to escape the Scottish auditory assault. 35. Gaslighting is an ugly word, but in the trenches of office warfare, it is a beautiful strategy. An employee wanted to mess with a coworker who was a notorious neat freak, the kind of guy who measures the distance between his stapler and his mousepad with a ruler. Every single night, the prankster would sneak into the office and move every single object on the victim's desk exactly 1 inch to the left. Just 1 inch. It wasn't enough to look messy, but it was enough to trigger a deep, subconscious sense of wrongness. The victim spent weeks rubbing his temples, convinced he was developing a neurological disorder or that the building was slowly tilting into the ocean. 36. Parking wars are where civility goes to die. A senior partner was notorious for parking his massive, gas-guzzling SUV directly over the white line, taking up 2 prime spots every morning. A junior associate decided against leaving a polite note. Instead, he bought a box of bright pink sidewalk chalk. He drew a brand new, custom-outlined parking spot around the poorly parked car and labeled it Princess Parking in massive, childish letters. The partner walked out to find half the office taking photos of his newly designated VIP zone. It was humiliating, colorful, and he never parked over the line again. 37. The office printer is a sacred communal space, not a library for your snooping eyes. An accountant noticed a nosy coworker named Kevin who loved to read everyone's confidential printouts before they could retrieve them. To catch him in the act, the accountant printed a single sheet of paper with nothing but 72-point bold font reading, "I know you are reading this, Kevin." He left it sitting face up in the tray for 3 hours. Watching Kevin walk by, glance at the tray, freeze, and then awkwardly shuffle away without making eye contact was worth every penny of the printer toner. 38. Mark was a helper. You know the type. Constantly hovering, offering bad advice, and generally getting in the way of actual work. The team lead finally found a solution to keep him busy. He started assigning Mark critical, high-priority research tasks on subjects that didn't exist. Mark spent a full week diligently compiling a 40-page report on the migratory patterns of the North American velveteen snipe. The team got a week of peace and quiet, and Mark felt important. It was a win-win situation provided nobody actually read the report and realized Mark was tracking imaginary birds. 39. The smartest way to avoid work is to blame technology. An employee who was tired of his boss hovering over his shoulder set his screensaver to a fake, looped video of a Windows Update screen stuck at 99%. Whenever he heard the boss approaching, he triggered the screensaver. He spent cumulatively hours waiting for his computer to update while actually scrolling on his phone, and the boss couldn't say a word because you simply cannot rush Microsoft. 40. Passive-aggressive notes are the currency of the break room, but one exchange deserves a Pulitzer Prize. A woman named Brenda kept leaving angry post-its on the empty coffee pot. Someone finally snapped. When Brenda left a note asking, "Is it so hard to make a new pot?" a creative writer responded with a new note underneath. Yes, Brenda. For some of us, staring into the abyss of the coffee filter is a daily, Sisyphean struggle that crushes the soul. It turned a petty complaint into a philosophical crisis, and Brenda stopped leaving notes because she didn't want to debate existentialism before 9 a.m. 41. Food theft is a crime, but feeding people dog food is a masterpiece. A manager was notorious for stealing the best snacks from the communal kitchen without asking. An employee decided to bait the trap. He started bringing in high-end, artisanal dog biscuits that looked exactly like gourmet oatmeal cookies. He placed them in a nice tin on the counter. He then sat back and watched with glee as the manager grabbed a handful and wolfed them down during a meeting. The employee waited until the last crumb was gone before casually asking, "So, how are you enjoying those organic hip and joint treats?" 42. If you have a workplace stalker who obsessively checks your shared calendar to see where you are, you have to give them a show. An employee noticed a coworker named Linda was constantly monitoring his schedule, so he filled his calendar with fake, deeply concerning appointments. It is hard for Linda to gossip when she sees his afternoon blocked out for 2 p.m. cry uncontrollably in my car, followed by 3 p.m. practice my villain monologue in the mirror. Linda actually stopped asking him where he was going, mostly because she was terrified of the answer. 43. Communal office puzzles are supposed to be relaxing, but in this office, it became a hostage situation. A team spent weeks working on a 5,000-piece landscape, only to find the final piece missing. The next day, a ransom note appeared on the fridge, made from cut-out magazine letters. It demanded brand name hazelnut coffee creamer in exchange for the missing sky piece. Management caved within 24 hours, proving that terrorism works if the stakes are low enough. 44. The world of office horticulture is surprisingly cutthroat. Karen reigned as the plant queen, flaunting her perfect fern like a crown. A jealous rival decided to dethrone her using the power of soda. Every evening, the rival would water Karen's prized plant with flat Sprite instead of water. The sugar slowly clogged the roots, and the plant turned a sickly yellow and died over the course of a month. Karen was baffled and heartbroken, while her rival offered insincere, sugary condolences, knowing full well she had committed botanical murder. 45. Technology is confusing for the older generation of management, and one employee exploited that beautifully. He printed out official-looking voice-activated stickers and placed them on the new break-room paper towel dispensers. For weeks, the staff was treated to the hilarious sight of serious executives waving their hands and shouting, "Dispense!" or "paper" at a plastic box. It was a cruel social experiment that proved people will believe anything if it is printed on a glossy sticker, and watching the CEO argue with a bathroom appliance is a memory that money just can't buy. 46. Never annoy the IT guy. He controls the words you type. An IT technician, annoyed by a condescending coworker who loved corporate speak, installed a custom script on her computer. Every time she typed the phrase, "per my last email," it automatically corrected to, "as my nagging continues." The change was subtle enough to miss if you were typing fast. She sent 3 increasingly confused emails to a major client before anyone pointed it out. She had to send a 4th email just to apologize for her rogue keyboard, which is a humiliation that lasts forever. 47. Work-life balance is dead, but this team resurrected it. Their boss had a habit of emailing them constantly after work hours, ruining their evenings. The team banded together and created a secret email rule. Any email sent by the boss after 6 p.m. was automatically forwarded to his wife's personal email account with the subject line, "Just thinking of you." After a few nights of his wife asking why he was sending her spreadsheets and angry demands at dinner, the late-night emails mysteriously stopped. 48. There is a special place in the afterlife for people who leave exactly one useless dribble of coffee in the pot, just so they don't have to brew a new one. An employee decided to visualize this pettiness. He bought a collection of tiny doll-sized porcelain teacups. Every time he found the near-empty pot, he would carefully pour the remaining drops into one of the tiny cups and leave it on the offender's desk. It was a passive-aggressive art installation that screamed, "This is how much you contributed today." And it was absolutely devastating. 49. To gaslight a micromanager who watched everyone's screens, an employee plugged a wireless mouse dongle into the USB port on the back of the boss's computer tower. He kept the actual mouse hidden at his own desk. Whenever the boss tried to close a window or open a spreadsheet, the employee would give his mouse a little jiggle or click randomly. Watching the boss fight a possessed cursor for 3 hours, slamming his desk and screaming at IT about ghosts in the machine, was the ultimate act of silent, invisible rebellion. If you didn't recognize yourself in this list, congratulations. You are probably the office villain everyone hates. Now, I want a real confession. What is the single most expensive or destructive mistake you buried at work and never told a soul about? I am talking about the files you deleted or the equipment you accidentally broke. Confess in the comments. I won't tell HR. Like and subscribe, or your printer will jam tomorrow.